So without any further ado, let's start the show. Very pleased to have Jeremy and Larry here. We've enjoyed their performances in the past here at the store over the years, but this is the first time they've played together here at the piano store. So let's give them a warm virtual welcome. Jeremy Cohen on violin, Larry Dunlap on piano. Enjoy.
Two, one, two. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeremy Cohen. This is Larry Dunlap. We are here in beautiful Oakland, California, and we are playing a live stream concert for you, but you already know that because you're watching us on your computer, or on your tablets or on whatever. Thanks so much for joining us. This would be a good time for me to actually take the microphone and talk into it. Thanks again for joining us. Jeremy Cohen and Larry Dunlap, Piedmont Piano, and we are doing some violin jazz. Larry and I make up half of a band that's been around for, let's see, how many years now?
Since I was 2.
Since Larry was 2, and you're way more than 2 now. So let's just call it 30 years. Let's see. Well, 86. We started the band.
Maybe.
96, 206, 216, 30.
Sometime in the 90s.
No. Anyway, we feature the music of some of the great classic jazz violin players. The first piece you heard us play was a composition by the great jazz pianist Billy Taylor, who at 19 years old was the pianist in a violin jazz band led by a gentleman by the name of Eddie South. And Billy Taylor wrote that piece for Eddie South, and it became a jazz violin classic. And the next piece we're going to play is another Eddie South influenced arrangement of a piece by Louis Alter called Manhattan Serenade. Thanks very much. Manhattan Serenade was a very popular tune in I think it was the 1940s. And after I learned it, I found out that it was the theme song, I think, of the Matty Malnick Orchestra, which was a big band, a popular radio band that played. It was the theme of that big band, plus it was used in The Godfather, the original Godfather. there's a scene where somebody comes out from New York to Los Angeles to talk to an actor, and it has the scene ends up. They're shot at the airport, and the song at that time is Manhattan Serenade. Although I think they were coming from New York to California, maybe the other way around, but the scene involved a horse, or a part of a horse, and a bed. What's that?
Slicing off.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. Anyway, you remember The Godfather. I'll talk a little bit later in the show. I've been having sort of an affair with this instrument. I've been exploring its history, and I've been really fascinated by it recently. So I'll share some fun facts with you. But first, let's play another tune by a classic jazz violin player who did not, who wasn't widely celebrated, wasn't very famous, but he was a wonderful player. A lot of studio players actually in LA had careers as jazz violinists for fun, and they worked and made money playing in the studios. I wonder what those days were like. But his name is Paul Nero. He wrote his most famous song would be Hot Canary, which some of you may or may not know. It goes like this. Anyway, it was a big hit in the 1940s. So those of you who are around then might remember it from then. Anyway, he wrote a lot of other wonderful pieces. The next two we are going to do are by Paul Nero. The first one's called In the Blue. Now, Paul was a small plane pilot. So the next two pieces, the title of the pieces actually refers to different parts of flying, or flying his small plane. Actually, let's start with Contact. The piece we're going to do is called Contact. Now, these days, the only kind of contact we hear about all the time is contact tracing, right? But this one is called Contact because when you start the plane engine, you send an electrical signal which starts the gas motor, and that's called contact. And this is the sound of the airplane's propellers firing up, making contact. A one, two, a one, two. Next up is In the Blue. 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Two by Paul Nero, In the Blue and Contact. Let's see. Oh, the violin. You know, I was talking about the violin. You probably have heard this violin before. As a matter of fact, I know you've heard this violin before. And if you have ever watched movies, or any movie from MGM between 1939 and 1969, you indeed have heard this violin before. Before I owned it, it was owned by a gentleman by the name of Lou Raderman, and he was the concert master of the MGM Orchestra. So his first job in 1939, he came from New York to play as concertmaster of the MGM Orchestra. The first job that he'd had at MGM in the contract orchestra, they were doing a little bit of experimentation. They had a young girl, they didn't know if it was going to go. They were using some color, they were using some black and white. It was an experimental film. They really weren't sure. It was quite a risk for the studio. The name of the movie was The Wizard of Oz. And turns out that that was Lou Raderman's first film. And after that, in 1939, every MGM soundtrack, every Kiss scene, every Tom and Jerry cartoon, every musical, Singin' in the Rain, American in Paris, Seven Brides, Seven Brothers, every Seven Brides, Seven Brothers, 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 Seven Brides, 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 Seven MGM orchestra soundtrack violin solo was played on this very violin by that gentleman, Lou Raderman. And I am very mindful of that. When I play this violin, I realize that it's familiar to everybody, whether they know it or not. So you're hearing it again. You've heard it before, and you're hearing it again today. And I'll tell you some of the other albums and stuff later on. But the next tune we're going to do is called, it's a jazz standard. It's called In a Sentimental Mood. in a sentimental mood. For COVID, in a semi-mental mood, we're all figuring out how to remain musicians and stay in love with what we do and keep on doing it and find new ways to do it during this pandemic. The room is strangely empty. We've played here at Piedmont Piano with audiences, and it's as grateful as we are to be here. And thank you again to Piedmont Piano for realizing that this is possible and can be done and should be done. We miss playing for live audiences, although we know there's a virtual audience out there, and we are delighted to have you with us. The room's very quiet. So hey Larry, I understand you play live concerts on Facebook on a regular basis, is that right?
That's right. I don't have a mic for you. No, you tell him.
All right, every Wednesday and Sundays, at what time? 7 Pacific.
Yeah.
And what's your Facebook address?
Just go to my page, Larry Dunlap.
Larry Dunlap on Facebook. And he plays live from the cave twice a week. Larry's, as you can hear, a wonderful jazz pianist, beautiful
Songs and stories.
songs and stories. Stories about the business?
It's Uncle Larry from the cave, from my past, and yeah, from the business.
Yeah. Can I share my Sammy story?
Yeah.
I'll tie it in.
If you don't take too long.
All right. I was a freelance musician living in Los Angeles. So, by the way, as we said, Larry Dunlap on Facebook Live, Wednesdays and Sundays, 7 p.m. Pacific. My story is I was a freelancing musician living in Los Angeles playing sessions and shows, and I got a call to go up to Vegas and play in a string section. Long story short, it was a Sammy Davis show. Connection to that is that I didn't know it at the time. This is before I actually had this violin. I was involved in the Sammy Davis show, and I was so struck by Sammy. I was really stunned. He was so incredible, talented, fantastic, warm and friendly to the musicians. He was a regular guy. You know, he hung out with the band for a while in the breaks, in the band room. He'd come in and say hello, talk to us, and he was extremely generous. But one day I noticed we were playing a show, and Sammy finished the show, took a big grand bow, and turned to face the wings of the stage, which was passing right in front of the string section. And he was elegantly dressed, tailor-made, beautiful tuxedo, beautiful buttons, studs, everything. He dressed like $1 million, literally. And he took his bow tie and he pulled it, and it was a silk bow tie, and it dropped so beautifully on top of his tuxedo, and he strolled right off the stage. And he walked right past me, and I thought, God, I've got to learn how to tie my bow tie. So I went downstairs. I ran down on the break, and I went to the valet at the Harris Club, I think it was, and his name was Cal. And he said, come back tomorrow night. I told him, I got to learn how to tie my bow tie. You got to help me. And he said, come back tomorrow night. And he Xeroxed a page out of Gentleman's Quarterly, out of GQ magazine. It was the steps to tie your own bow tie. I've never looked back. I've tied my own bow tie, and I think of Sammy Davis every time I do that. Okay? That's my story. Let's do all of me, because Sammy would have done all of me on the wham of Sam.
Okay. Are we doing it in C?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll play the last 8 in, so you can find out what tempo I want to do it in. Here we go. Is Iris out there watching? Iris, are you there? I want to say hi to some people I know who are watching. Do you know anybody watching, Larry? You don't know who's watching? Is Andrea watching? Is Angela watching? Nate?
I bet Angela.
Iris?
Yeah,
Angela? I think Angela is. Iris, I'm pretty sure you are.
I think Jim is watching.
Jim Kerwin?
No, from the store.
Oh, Jim Callahan.
Said he was going to go home and watch.
Hey, Jim. Hope you guys are enjoying. Gabby, Lara, Hezekiah, are you watching?
Are those the babies? New baby?
Roman,
Roman.
Roman, and Hezekiah are my new grandchildren this year. That's right. All right. Let's see. Who else is out there? Well, I don't know. You'll have to tell us. Let's see. Why don't we do wave?
Yes.
Oh, so this is our wave to you. Hate to be corny, but we're going to wave to you by playing the song, a Latin jazz thing.
And at least for me, it's a blue wave.
All right, Larry brings politics, and we are in Oakland, so let's hear it for the folks from Oakland, bringing it. Okay, Oakland, California. Whoever thought the same violin that played the plucked whisker on Tom and Jerry would be playing Wave. We're back. You're here. It's us. Coming to you live from Oakland, California. Piedmont Piano. I'm surrounded by a room full of magnificent pianos. I'm sure you've seen in some of the previews or the ads. We are so grateful to them to, there's this whole room of open pianos with vibrating strings. This is such a good place for a piano and or a violin.
Once, I don't have the mic, but you tell them, once I was here, and all of these pianos are being played at the same time. Larry was just saying that he was inside the shop when was everybody playing the same piece, hopefully? Yeah.
What were you playing?
I forget what they were playing. I wasn't playing, but they all were.
Oh, really? Was it a classical piece? Was it a jazz piece?
I think a classical piece, yeah.
So many pianos. I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, at least 20 grand pianos in this room. But this magnificent Fazioli, to sit here in this open, inside the opening of the piano.
It plays itself.
It really does?
Yeah.
That's not you.
I
That's
don't have to play it.
you don't. He doesn't do a darn thing. Well, in that case, we'll just walk our way through the next piece by Eddie South called Black Gypsy. Now, Eddie South is one of my great jazz violin heroes. It just so happens that he's an under-celebrated hero of the jazz violin, but Eddie South was a great violinist, composer, and band leader. And he, not being able, he's black, and he wasn't able to get a classical education in the U.S., so he went over to Europe, and he studied at the Prague Conservatory. And I think the war broke out, and he needed to a lot of Americans needed to get out of Europe and get back to the U.S., which was at that time a safer place to be. And he came through Paris, met up with Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli, recorded a few tunes with them while in Paris, and then returned to the U.S., where he was a band leader and composer, and he played with a young Billy Taylor, as I mentioned earlier. This composition by Eddie South is called Black Gypsy. Very nice. Okay, we have a couple more for you before this show comes to a close. We didn't play Humoresque.
We didn't know, and I was wondering about that.
Yeah. So that's another one of these crossover pieces where we have this is a piece that's done in the style of one of the great jazz violin players of the last century, Joe Venuti. Giuseppe Venuti, actually the frilly fiddler from Philly. He played in Paul Whiteman's orchestra.
Don't you have one of his shirts?
I have a shirt and a tie of Joe Venuti's. And I went and saw him at the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco when I was in high school, so 74 or 75, 1975, last century. Remember last century?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty well. So I went to I was thinking about where I was going to go to college, and I ended up going to a show at the Great American Music Hall. After I watched Joe Venuti play, I picked my jaw up off the floor. I could not believe how much joy and energy and fantastic Disley trio. No, that was Grappelli. He had Venuti had a different guitar player. But I was just so taken by at the moment, and I was looking for where to go to school to study classical violin. I had played a little jazz, but I wasn't yet fully into it. And I heard Venuti play, and I said, that's it, I'm going wherever he is. And so I ran up to the stage. I just didn't see anything else. I didn't even know if it was appropriate or not. It probably wasn't. But I ran up to the stage and I said, Mr. Venuti. And I got his attention, and he said, yeah, kid, yeah. I said, do you teach? I'll go wherever you are. I knew he lived up by where you were in Seattle or Portland. You're in Portland, right? Joe Venuti lived up in that area at the time. And he looked at me, and he saw that I was a very enthusiastic young kid. He looked at me, and he pointed at me, and he said, kid, I don't teach. He said, do you play classical? And I said, yeah, I do. And he looked at me, and he looked at me square in the eye, and he said, don't stop. And that was my great advice from Joe Venuti. Keep studying classical violin. He loved the classics, though. I mean, and he always quoted them. And I did continue my studies. I went from San Francisco, or here in the Bay Area, where I studied with Ann Crowden, on to New York, and I studied there with Itzhak Perlman. So I continued my classical studies, but I also continued to be a student of Joe Venuti. This we're about to play is a version, a Venuti-style version of Humoresque by Antonin Dvorak / Joe Venuti. one, a two, a 1, 2, 3.
Safe.
Safe. There you go. I can hear the virtual clapature, the virtual clapage. What do we call it? We have to make up names for this. The roaring crowd out there in cyberspace in their
Thanks
homes.
for the applaud, audience.
What is the sound of all those hands clapping, but not in the hall we're in? I don't know. I don't know. You think we'd know by now?
A roar coming through.
The roar, the virtual roar. Hold on. Yes, we hear you. Thank you for that. Thanks again to Piedmont Piano for hosting this wonderful venue and opening their space to continue to bring music to people who want to share that experience, that human connection of creating art and receiving it is still the most critical thing, I think.
I think it's important to remind them that they can make a donation.
I think there's a thing on the screen that if people
But
do
it's
want to
always
help,
nice to say something.
and I'm going to tell you this: whatever donations we get through your generous donations, well, I think there's a Venmo address that's listed. I will share with Mr. Dunlap.
How nice.
I will share them with you.
Yeah.
You played more notes than I did.
Well, that's true.
I mean, we're not getting paid by the note, but we're getting paid for our fine integrity and intent. And for that, it's a 50-50 deal.
All right. You heard it here.
You heard it here. So thank you also to Larry Dunlap. Do check him out on Facebook on Wednesdays and Sundays at 7. Uncle Larry's full of stories. I should tell another story, but I don't know. What do you think? Another tune, and we'll call it a show?
I think so.
Okay. Anything else? Well, we're talking with some of our presenters who would have had us were it not for COVID. We're hoping for some live concerts, perhaps up on the North Coast in June. And watch for, I think jeremycohen.com is the website for this Violinjazz band. And if you'd like to have us or have us host us to play for you, we are looking forward for more playing opportunities and to continue to carve our way into these modern times. We'll always be bringing music on the computer and online and teaching online. By the way, Sherry and Dathan are watching up in Toronto. It's getting late up there, but I want to give a shout out to all my friends at stringmasters.com. That's a private teaching website that for studio teaching, one-on-one teaching, master classes, and group lessons. Stringmasters.com. Please check it out. Larry, I'd like to invite you to become the first ever piano master teacher on stringmasters.com. And I'll give you a test run of the platform. Anybody wants a tour, get in touch. We are going to finish out our show with a version of Sweet Georgia Brown. Again, thanks to Piedmont Piano, thanks to Larry Dunlap. I'm Jeremy Cohen. Thanks Noah, thanks Jason, thanks everybody at Piedmont Piano, thanks Jim. And do keep an eye out for us. We have you have a lot of YouTube films, don't you, Larry? If you type in Larry Dunlap on YouTube, and of course mine, Jeremy Cohen, you'll find all kinds of different genres. We love to mix it up. So here's our last tune, version of Sweet Georgia Brown. Thanks again for joining us, and send a shout out. Let us know you saw the show. Either send a message in Facebook or send an email, but tell us you're out there, and we will say thanks in advance. Thanks. Thanks, Piedmont Piano. Thank all of you. See you next time online.
What wonderful music. Thank you so much. Jeremy Cohen-violin, Larry Dunlap on piano. Thanks so much. Now, the links are still up for you to donate to these musicians. And if you haven't already, please help them out with a generous donation, a generous tip, if you like this, this beautiful music. They really appreciate it. And don't forget, if you want to know about all of our upcoming shows, go to piedmontpiano.com where you can join our email list. Also, you can like us on Facebook, and please subscribe on YouTube. So that's all for us until 1 week from this evening. Tiffany Austin will be here with her show, Freedom Song. We're really looking forward to that, and there are many wonderful shows coming up in the future, too. So until next week, this is Jim Callahan saying my co-producer of the Showroom Sessions is Jordan Perlman, and our on-site engineer, the very talented Noah Hendricks. So we'll see you next week. Bye.